In this video we will be building part 3 of our real estate platform, and before we get into the building of this, let's have a quick look at what we aim to achieve by the end of this video. So the first thing we'll be looking at here is the ability to set if the property is for rent or for sale. And if it's for rent, then we will see this price per month here, and we'll add this availability date when the user can, or when the customer can move in, and we'll update this show more, show less. So we've corrected this text on this button that was there from the last video. We'll add this title here for the other properties by this agent, and we'll add some additional buttons here under the real estate agent. So we'll have this button to click to view the phone number. I'll have a link to their profile also, and a email button. And once I click that email button, then we'll get this dialog pop up, so this modal window. And there's a form here that lets us fill it out and send a message to this real estate agent. And once you submit this form, you get this success message, and in the background what's happening is an email gets sent to that real estate agent. So they get this email saying all the information that you have entered here, and then finally underneath this real estate agent details we'll have this map, and the location of this map is actually populated by the address that is entered for this property, so that will always change automatically. And then finally here we've got these icons for bedrooms, bathrooms and parking, and we've also added a favicon, so that's that little icon at the top of the browser window. And I will just quickly show you the difference if we click on a property that is for sale. So this one has been set for rent. So if we look at the for sale property, most of the content that has not changed in here. It was originally set in the previous video. So we've got this for sale at the top, we've got a full price here, we've got the monthly repayments based on the mortgage of 30 years, and we also have all of the updates that we've got for the map and everything else that we've added. So before we hop into building these updates, I just want to say that if you guys enjoy this content, make sure and subscribe to the channel, as this is just one of the videos I've been creating, and there will be many more to come building different platforms using Ruby on Rails. And I'm also planning to create some content using React Native and Flutter for mobile applications, so stay tuned for that. And if you find this platform useful, I'm also selling it on my store, so check out the link in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's get back into building our platform. So going back to our version of this platform from the last video, the first thing I'm doing here is I'm setting up a new favicon. So that favicon is the icon in the top of the browser tab. And I'm using favicon.io to create this. And I've actually just come across this site very recently, but it's a quick way to put together a really simple icon for your application. And in this case, I'm using the asset URL to populate that path to the image. And I've downloaded them, dropped them in my assets directory. And once you place that code in the header of your page, it's a really quick way to set this up. So the next thing I'm going to do is just sign into the platform, and here we will just have a look at what's going on in the back end. So in this case, once the user signs in, I want to automatically redirect them to the dashboard. So I'm just going to do this really quickly in the home view, or the main view in our public controller. So I'm just saying if the account is signed in, it will redirect the user to the dashboard path. And I'm using that and return statement here just to ensure that it just terminates this block of code at this point. It doesn't run anything after this line of code. So I will also pass in here a message using the flash success, and we will just try this out now. So let's visit the dashboard, and we will see it redirects us automatically. So giving that redirect, and it's saying it's coming from the public controller on line 3. So one thing we don't have in our application yet is a way to display these flash messages. And in this case, I'm using the Yarn package manager to install a gem called Toaster. Now Toaster lets us create these notifications using JavaScript. And I'm just going to paste in some code here into our packs folder, our JavaScript packs folder under the application.js. And basically it just sets up the configuration for Toaster. And I'm also going to paste in a little bit of code I've used in a previous video, which is a helper method to populate these notifications. So I'm just removing some of this old code, and you'll see here at the bottom there's a div with an ID of notifications, and it outputs a notice. Now what that's for is our helper method to output these flash notifications. So we actually need to change the name of that. So I want to call that helper method here, flash notifications. And we can try this out now by signing back in. So when we sign back in, we should get a welcome message, and that will tell us if this is working. Now it doesn't appear to be working right now, so something's not quite right, and we'll just investigate. So you can see that the JavaScript is being created here and output to the page. So it looks like we've forgotten to do something here with the style sheet. And we just need to make a reference to this toaster style sheet here in our application. So let's try this once again by signing out of our page. And we can see now we're getting that notification, and we should get it again once we sign back in. Okay, and that's looking good. Okay, so the next thing we want to do here is tidy up this left navigation. I want to remove some of these options that we won't be getting around to in this video, so let's move things around a little bit. So we'll open up our sidebar navigation, and I want to move these reports, so we'll name this settings instead, and at the bottom then we'll move down this account settings to the bottom. We'll also remove this little plus icon, so I don't think we need this right now. So let's take that out, and we'll also put a link to the user profile down here at the bottom too. So let's start by moving this link down. And I also want to change this from customers. We'll rename this to contacts because it's really just going to be leads that we get. So people who want to make an inquiry about property won't be necessarily customers at this point. So in here we will change this to be a profile link, and we'll just paste in a icon for that too. So we'll use the same icon as before, the file text as a temporary icon for this, and we'll call this my profile. And we just need to change the link in here too. So account profile path, and if we go back to our routes file, you can see that we don't have a path for the profile yet. So I'll just set one up really quickly. So we'll just be another get request here, and we'll call this profile, and then we can put that in the controller for dashboard, I guess, for now. Maybe we can set up a separate controller for this later, but I think it's fine for now. And we will use the ID of that account to select the user. So let's add this method into our dashboard controller, and we'll be using the params for the ID. And I'm going to create a new view here for the profile page, and we'll just really quickly just output the name of the user, just a very minimum right now, just to see that the page is working. And once we reload this, we can see that we have a mistake in our URL. So let's update this with our new path, and we'll pass in the current user at this point. So that works. It looks terrible right now, but we'll fix that up later. Then we can see right now, so we've got these two links at the bottom which are working. We've got our properties link that's working. We can edit the properties, view them, add new ones, but we don't have a way right now to show whether a property is rental property or whether it is a for sale property. So let's add a new column to our table to let the user decide whether they're selling the property or renting it out. So let's set up a new migration for this. And this is going to be a Boolean value, so that's just a true or false value. So each property will have a for sale column, so we can say then that we can call the property directly and say dot for sale question mark, and that would be a true or false value. So quite easy to check the intention of that agent, whether they're selling or renting. So we'll run our migration right now, and we can add that field into the form for the properties. So for this, we can use a select field. And we're just going to pass in a true or false value. And we can do that using options for select. So let's pass in yes and no as an option here. And reloading the page, then we can choose that for each of the properties. So by default, we're saying that the property is for sale, but we can just edit any of those existing ones. But currently, once we make that update, it's not showing the correct value once we've saved it. So we can pass in a selected value using this options for select. So we can do a comma here and add in the actual value of that property right now. So we'll say property.forsale, and that will return a true or false. So that's working now correctly. And if we go back to our form now, we can see that the price, we really need to be using the price field for both the for sale and for rent. Both of those types of properties, we need to use this price field. So we may want to change a label on this price field just to make it clear that it can be monthly or a full price for a sale property. We could actually toggle two different price fields for rental by the month and by a total sale price, but I think for now it's fine. We just have updated the label to make it clear when adding properties what the value is actually for. So on the front end, then we need to change the show view of this property profile, to make it appear a little bit different if it's a rental property. So right now it's being treated the same for both rental and for sale. So if it's a for sale property, we want to show the monthly repayments of a mortgage or loan for that property. But otherwise, we don't need to see that value. And we can also modify our price at the top of the page. So right now, if there is no price set, it says the property is for sale. So we don't want that to be, we want to change that now. So let's use this property.forsale query again, and we will pass in two separate prices here. So in this, we can change this to for rent, and then we can also say here that it's per month. So that rent is monthly. So this slash per month, and let's try this out. And just makes it a little bit more clear. And if we look now at this show more box, that's one thing we didn't get around to fixing in the last video. So once you open that, we want to be saying show less. So we want to toggle that message on that button. So let's update our JavaScript for this really quickly. So in this case, we can check to see if a class has been attached to that description field. So we'll just debug this really quickly using the console log. You can see that once they click on that to show more, it gets called, and it doesn't when you close it again. So that's perfect for us right now. We just want to change the value on that button. We can say list.text, and we can say show less. So that's list.text will change the actual text within that button, in that button element. So let's duplicate this, and then we'll do the opposite if it is already being closed. Okay, so that's working correctly now. So that's pretty quick and easy fix. So what we want to do now is we could probably show something here on this white space on the left. So previously we had this mortgage calculator there, but on our property we can have an availability date from when that property is ready to move in, or when it's basically when it's ready to be moved in for the user, for the customer. So let's try and display a date in that space. So in order to do that, we will need to add a new field to our table. So we'll call that field available date, and we'll set it as a date time value. Now, if we look in our schema, our database schema, we will see that the default dates set for created at and updated at. So those are default values that are set by Rails. So those are date time values also. So we can actually handle our own custom field in the same way. So we can we can format that date in the same way that we would be able to with the created at date. So anyway, back in our form for adding properties, we will add in this available date, and we'll just use a date field here. So the Rails helper for this generates this really simple date field that allows us to pass in the day, month, and year. And it's just perfect for what we need. It's just a really simple way to show the availability date. So let's add this to the controller. And if we look at the logs here, we can see that the date has been saved correctly. So now let's go back to our profile view. And in here we can say then that if it's not for sale, this property, we want to show the date. So we'll say available from, and then we will pass in this available date, and then we will format that date. And if you have a quick search on Google, most of the values to format this date are found quite easily online. So there are a lot of ways you can customize a date. So in our case, I want to show the day and the date and the month. And I also want to have the ND or the TH suffix that comes after the number. So we will be using the string from time helper to create this date formatting. So in this case, I'm saying available from Tuesday, and then I want to add a comma here and say the 1st of October, for example. So let's do that, and we will then do the string from time again. Now we could possibly combine this into one statement, and we can actually set that as part of the configuration under our config folder. So we can set up an initializer for our time and date values, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to do this all in line here, just really quickly. And now we've got something that looks pretty good. So we've got Tuesday, 1st of October, but we can change that to the full month name. So I think that's looking pretty good right now. That's pretty much what I wanted to achieve with this. So the next thing I want to do here at the top of the page is just to show, to make this more clear, that it is a rental property. And in the case of it not being a rental property, we also want to show that it's for sale. So we'll add a new paragraph here at the top of the page. And we will use an inline conditional here just to say that this is either for sale or is for rent. And aside from that, then we can also change this for sale, for rent text that is set if there is no price for that property. So if it's for sale, we can say offers accepted. And if it's for rent, then we can say open for inquiries. So just to bring some information here when no price has been added. And I'm just going to modify the styling here a little bit. So changing the margin at the bottom, reducing down the font size, and it's looking not bad right now. Overall, quite happy with this. What we can do here is change these icons. So we can add icons to this top information about the bedrooms, bathrooms, parking. So we can use the same icons that we do at the bottom of the page. So let's just copy and paste this icon. This is for the bedrooms. Paste that in. And we'll change the margin on that. So we just want to have the icon at the top, and underneath we'll have the number of rooms. And it looks like I've made a mistake. I need to move this text around so that bathrooms in the middle and the top one will be bedrooms. And we really want to have the number and the word bedrooms on the same line. So let's move this around a little bit, see what we can do here. So just by moving this to a wider column layout, it seems to fix this issue of breaking onto two lines. So we can apply this across each of these values and see how it looks. So we'll just paste this in again, this icon, and we'll change the icon just to match. And really this isn't that important in the grand scheme of things, but maybe I'm spending a little bit too much time on this, but I just like to get things looking really nice, especially in terms of this property profile. But I think just by making this a small text it starts to look pretty good right here. So I'll keep everything the same. And we'll just remove this margin on the right, and that will pull that to the right. So underneath this agent details on the right column, I'm going to add a Google map, and we're going to output the properties address, and we'll say to param for that, and we will add a class here just to match the margin left that is on the agent details above, and we'll see how that looks. So right now we're using a test address for this user, but if we add in a real address for that, then this should be working correctly. So I'm going to copy a test address just from Google. So I'll just type in a street name here in Sydney. I will copy this address, and I will add this in to our property. So if we go back to our property and edit, so in the form here for the address, I'm going to paste that in and save it. And now you can see that the map is pointing on that address. So that looks pretty good, happy with that. One thing we can add here at the bottom of the page is a title that goes above this properties list. This list of properties is for other properties by that agent. So let's add a headline for that. And I'm just going to wrap a column around this headline. And then we will make this a H3 style, and we'll add some margin. The next thing we will do here is we want to center align this background image. Now if you notice here, it looks kind of cut off at the bottom, and we can change this by using the background position Y and center that. So let's add this to our style sheet. So we'll add that to center. And that's looking a lot better now. So if we click on some of the other properties here, you can see that it's for sale, and we've got this total sale price. And we go back to our rental property, you can see the difference here. So things are looking pretty nice right now, but this link at the top left isn't working. So we need to go back to our navigation, and if we have a look under public, we can see that it's just a hashtag here, so there's no real link at this point. So we can change it to this backslash, which goes to the home page, but it will just redirect us back to this dashboard. So really we want to set this URL correctly, determining whether the user signed in or not. So if they're signed in, we'll show the dashboard link, otherwise we'll show the homepage link. So let's add that now. And you can see it goes straight to the dashboard rather than the redirect that we had before. So now I want to have a look at these call to action under the agent. Now if we look at domain.com.au, we can see they have this call button. Once you click on it, it shows the phone number. And we can do something similar to that. Now I've seen this on a few different websites, not just property websites, but other listing websites. And that's how they track engagement of people clicking on certain buttons. So we could actually record how many people click on the button, for example, and return that in a report to the user. But just for now, we are going to just have this click functionality where we show a phone number once it's clicked. So we'll add an icon onto this, show the phone icon, and then we will make this button the full width using the button block class. Now we'll need to modify our layout here a little bit because it's looking a little bit strange. Now currently we have this padding top, but if we change that just to padding on the whole box, then we can see that this button layout looks better. We'll want to add a margin to the bottom to create some space. And we'll also add another button here to view the user profile. And we'll make that a secondary color. And I'm actually going to change this button into a link. So this link will point directly to the user's profile. There's no real purpose of us having a button for this particular need. So a link will do us well here. So let's clean this up and try it out. Now there's something a little bit strange here about this call button. We must have made a mistake here. So if you look back at our phone icon, So we can see there's a margin bottom on the phone icon, so that should have been on the wrapping button. So the button, yeah, that's better now. So now let's try to get this call button working. So we'll add an ID to this button so that we can actually control that button when it's clicked, and we'll add a value for data tel. So that's going to be a telephone number in there, and we will store that phone number in that value, and we'll use JavaScript then to change the actual view on the front end. So we'll add a new migration here to record the agent's phone number. So that will go into the accounts table, and we'll run that migration. So now we need to add the telephone number onto the edit account page. So let's add this as a new field. And again, we'll add it into the application controller. So we'll whitelist this telephone field so that it can be saved. So going back to our edit account now, and we can see that this page needs styled up, but for the time being, let's just add the phone number for this account. So we'll come back to the styling of this page later. Now we need to make a slight change to our show view for the agent details. So we just corrected the name of that field. And now we will go back to our JavaScript file, and we will add some code here to capture the click on this button. And once the user clicks on this button, we want to change the text value on that button. So we want to show the actual phone number instead of the call text. So let's add a value for this, and we will use the data value. So just having a quick check here to make sure that everything matches up. We are pulling the data value, and we're calling telephone here, so we'll just modify this to match. And we'll try this out now again in the browser, and you can see here that this number is now showing. However, our icon has disappeared, so what we can do is we can wrap this call text in a span, and then we will target that span here in the JavaScript. So we'll replace the content of that span tag. So we should keep the icon when we try this again. Okay, that's working quite nicely now. So the next thing we want to do is use this email button. And we can see here on this other website, this property website, that we've got this pop-up and some fields we can fill out. And we can do this using Bootstrap. We can use something similar here. So we've got this modal window. It opens up with some fields that let you put in the name and the message. So I'm just going to copy this code, and we will modify it slightly to fit what we want to input for the user. So I'll paste this in here at the bottom. I'll take out 2 of these buttons and just see what we need to change here. So basically we just need to trigger this event once the user clicks on this email button. So I'll add this JavaScript first, and we will change the IDs on this. So we can see here that this is basically just modifying the content of that modal window. Now we don't really need to do much with the content of the modal window, so I'm going to take these out. And for now I'm going to change the ID which is used here. So we'll change this to contact modal, and then we'll have to input that into our markup. So go back to the HTML code we pasted in, and in here we'll put the name of the agent. So we can use our agent data, so we'll just output that directly into the HTML. And we need to set our ID on this modal. So the formatting is going a little bit funny here, but so yeah, we'll put the ID in this modal, and we will copy the values here of this button, and then we will paste that into our email button that we already have on the page. So we'll find that under our agent details. We'll just add these toggle functionality, and we will try this out. So that's working. It pops up this little overlay. Quite nice. And then we can add fields to that form now. So we'll move this out into a partial and just cleans up the code a little bit, just keep things a bit tidier. So we're creating a form tag here just to wrap around these fields in our modal window. And we'll set up a custom route for this. So we will call that email agent. So that's a path of email agent. And we can set this to a post method. So we'll probably end up sending this form using JavaScript, but for now, this just set this up. So we can add a hidden field here for the agent ID. So we'll need the agent ID in order to know which email address to send the contact information to. So let's update this and we'll pass in agent.id, and then we can remove this label. So we'll not need that for the hidden field. Take out this extra markup, and let's go and set up our route now. So we'll set a post method here. And we'll use the properties controller for this, and we will create a new method here called contact agent, our email agent. So within our properties controller, we can set up this method now. And for now, we can return, basically we want to return a JSON response. And in here we will trigger an email send. So we will be setting up a new mailer for that. So going back to our modal now, I'm going to add an ID here. And this ID will be email agent. And we'll need this ID to be able to grab the values of these fields. So we'll add additional fields here for the user name. And we will change this to a text input field rather than a text area. So we'll use the Rails helper, form helper to input the appropriate fields here. Pass in the name. So this should be text field tag. We'll pass in a nil value. And this is working now, but we would actually like to just make this a first name, and we can capture the surname or the second name separately. Change that to last name. And then we'll also capture an email address for that user so that the agent can respond to them. So we'll update these IDs. So let's try this out once more, and we can see all of our new fields have been added. So we want to change this the color of this button to make it green to match our action buttons on the platform. So now we can just check that these values are being sent to the controller. So let's set up some variables here that grab these params are passed through to this method. So we're passing through the first name, last name, email, and message. So we will just set these, and then we'll come back and finish this later. So the next thing we want to tidy up here is these buttons in the agent details. So we want to make this a little bit cleaner in terms of layout. So we'd like it if these buttons are all the two buttons at the bottom are the same width, and the top one is a full width. So we can try doing this using the column layout from Bootstrap. So let's set this up quickly and see how it looks. So we're trying to make these buttons equal width. So we're using the button block class here that we did on the same way we did in the button above. But what we need to do here is set a row to wrap around these columns. We'll do the same for the column above. And that's looking a lot better, but we can actually tighten this space up between the two columns, between these two buttons at the bottom, and we can do that using a class to attach to these columns. So what we're doing here is removing the padding on the right and left, and of course we do want to have a little bit of a space in between, so maybe just a minimum amount here. So we'll use a class PR1 and PL1. These are bootstrap classes that add just a couple of pixels on the spacing. So that's looking pretty good now. So now we have our email field popping up, and we have this telephone being displayed, and our profile link is also working. So all of these three buttons are working now. But one thing I'm noticing here is this mortgage paragraph at the bottom explaining the mortgage calculation. So that's only useful if the property is for sale. So in this case, we don't want to show that for a rental property. So I will just add this conditional statement around that, and now it's hidden for the rental property. So let's continue with our pop-up dialog, our pop-up modal here, and we'll try to get this form working now. So we'll create a new one-click handler here for this send message button. So here on the send message button, we need to add an ID. So we want to basically attach this code to this button. So let's do this by adding an ID for this button. So we'll call this send message to agent, and then within our JavaScript, then we will use this hashtag and then send message to agent to select that button. And then we will call this Ajax method, and we will pass in the URL, which will be our agent message, and then we'll set the method as post, and we'll pass in some data then for this. So that will be the parameters that we're sending to our controller. So we can send the agent ID, that will be the hidden field, and then we'll have the first name, last name, email, message. So we can use the ID of each of these fields to grab the value. So in this case, it's message, first name, and agent ID for the hidden field. So going back to our JavaScript, and we can populate these variables. So we'll set a new variable for each of these fields. And we just want to make sure that this is sending as a JSON value. Now we could have actually done this using the form that we've created in our HTML code and just triggered that form using JavaScript, but it's good to see how this works in terms of Ajax too, to give you an idea how to use Ajax within applications in Rails. So this time we're just going to console log this just to debug it, just to see that the values are being set correctly. So let's fill this out, and we should see a request being sent here. Hit send, and nothing has happened here, so we must have a typo somewhere. Let's have a look at our code again. And it looks like we forgot to set the value on the last three fields here. So we'll say .val. This will pull the value of that field. So let's try this again. So we'll just reload the page, populate the form really quickly, and hit the send message again. And we can see that's highlighted in red, this message, so there's something going wrong here. And we haven't really finished this code in the controller, but it looks like it's missing the formatting, the respond to block here. I just copy and pasted this in earlier, but we missed pasting that in. So in here we'll just debug. We'll use the logger.debug to show the value within the Rails console, or the Rails logs, and just to see that everything's being set. So the Rails logger is really helpful just for debugging as you go along. It's a nice way to see what values are being passed. So this time it looks better, there's no errors. You can see here the form data that's being sent from the browser, and you can also see this should be able to see this in the Rails logs too. Now we've missed a field here, which is the agent ID within the controller, and we're also missing the email field, so let's set that value. So now we should have what we need. We're going to try this once more just to see if these values are showing up in the Rails logs. So everything looks to be sent here, which is great. And we'll look at the logs now. We can also see these fields. Now this is coming back from the controller. And you can see the parameters there at the top that have been sent. So the parameters actually mean that you don't need to do this logger.debug, but it's just good to see how you can do these things as you go along, because sometimes you'll be working with values that are not part of the parameters that are being passed. So anyway, we're going to set up a new mailer here. So we'll create a new contact mailer. Within that file, then we're going to have a method called email agent, and we'll pass in these values. So now we'll create that mailer within the mailers folder, and that mailer is going to inherit from the application mailer. So we'll create this, and we will say that it is contact mailer is inherited from the application mailer, and we'll pass in these values that this method will expect to receive. And then in here we will try to load the agent from this agent ID. So we'll set that first agent equals account.find and agent ID, and then if that agent exists, then we will do this sending of the email. So we need to pass in our email as the is going to the email that we have got for this agent, and then we'll set a message. So that will be the subject message of the email. And then we will need to set a couple of instance variables that contain the information about this user who's made contact with the agent. So we're just going to set these, and these will be used within the email body itself. And now we can create the new mailer views within our views directory. So we've created a folder here called contact mailer, and in here we're creating two files in here. One is for HTML and the other is for text only emails. So we just create the name of that file using the method name that's in our contact mailer. So we call it email agent, and we're just setting up the HTML view now, and we're just outputting these values to the body of the email. And we can set a simple format on this one just to create the paragraphs and the line breaks. So very simple email, just outputting the information. And we'll just create a new file then for the text only email. And the only difference in this file will be that we are just stripping out the HTML, and so everything else will be the same in both views. And we just need to ensure that we set this agent to be an instance variable also, as we're using a name within the view of the email. And let's try this out now just to see how it goes. And it looks like we have a small typo somewhere here in our email agent. So line 11, we forgot to add the alias in front of that. So this happens quite a bit once you're trying to move quickly, but this appears to be working this time. So we've got all the values, and we can see both versions of the email. So this looks pretty good right now. Pretty happy with this, but we can remove this simple format in the text-only email. But other than that, it seems to be working quite well. One thing we can do here now is show a success message once that email is sent. So right now we are console logging the data, but there is no data being returned from this AJAX request. But we know that if this success method is called, we can actually show a success message on the front end. So one way we can do that is just to replace the content of that form. So we just input some text there in place of the form fields. So we can do that and see how that looks. So I'm going to test this in the browser first, so I don't have to keep submitting this form over and over again. But we basically just want to remove the form and then input a new paragraph in its place, just to say that this has been sent successfully. And we can also remove this send message button too. So let's try to select it and remove that from the markup too. And okay, looks good. So we just leave the close button. So I think that's fine. The user can just see the success message and then they can close down the modal. So in here then we will, after removing these two fields, we will set the text of that modal body to be a custom message here. So we can actually do this as HTML and wrap it in a paragraph. And that should be more than enough, I think, for this case. So the last thing we can do is just try this once again to see everything working together. So it should be sending the email, we're getting the success message, and then we close down the modal. And if you're doing this in a production application, you really need to be doing validation on these fields to ensure that the user submits useful data. But I think for us right now it's fine, just for the we're just trying to put together a minimum product here. So that's working pretty well. We'll leave that there for now. So that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys have found this helpful. And just to kind of recap what we've covered here, we have got this for rent or for sale feature on our properties now. And we've got this monthly price if it's a rental. And we have a move-in date, so it's available from, in this case, the 1st of October. And we've also updated our show more, show less field like we mentioned at the beginning of this video. And we've also added some features under our properties, under our real estate agent for the showing of the phone number, the pop-up form for the email, and the email request that happens in the background. And then finally we've got this map that we've added. So I think we're probably going to create a part 4 for this property real estate build. I kind of feel like I don't want to leave it here, so I just want to finish it off, and we'll probably add a new section and maybe some way to show the listings differently, maybe by city. I'm not sure yet, but there's a few things yet we can do. We can build out the user profile, improve the admin backend, and just clean things up. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video today. If you have, do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.